it's about that time of the week we get, well, that time of a fortnight, should I say, we get Mayor Matt Dickerson in. Good morning, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good, Keegan. I think this is the first official mayoral interview we've done. So
Oh, yes, official is probably a word for it. I mean, I was sitting here last time.
That's
so I was
right.
present.
That's exactly right. So you've got the go of it. And so what's your story? Where have you come from? Welcome officially to Dubbo, of course, first of all.
Thank you very much.
But where have you come from? What's your background?
So I come from South Sydney, around, if people know where Cronulla is. There's the big popular beach there that's had some times in history where it wasn't entirely favourably put in the news, and that's about as much as I can linger to it, where it gives you a faint idea of where I've come from.
So are you a Cronulla boy? That means you're a Sharkies fan, or a South Sydney boy means you're a Rabbitohs fan?
I am more of a Sharks fan,
Right.
however it's really started dropping off since they last won the premiership, which was a couple of years ago now.
It was. And so you're a surfer, obviously, if you grew up around Cronulla?
Oh, if you saw me on a surfboard, you'd be very highly concerned. There'd have to be lifeguards present.
Okay, I thought it was compulsory. If you grew up in Cronulla, you had to be on the beach. Yeah.
You would think so, but I went slightly the opposite direction. No surfing. Very dangerous for me.
Because I was going to point you to Sandy Beach, because people often say when they move from Sydney,
Surf there? What?
well, no, but it's a beach.
Yeah,
So-
right, okay, that's a start.
That's right.
A start.
So people say when they move out to regional areas, they go, well, we miss the beach. Oh, we've got Sandy Beach. What more could you want? The surf's not great there, but it's also much safer for your kids. So.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was just a play on words calling it Sandy Beach, but there's actually sand there.
Oh,
I was
absolutely.
amazed.
You've got to get down there. Oh, you've seen it already?
I have seen
yeah,
it,
good,
yes.
good. So there's Sandy Beach
surprising.
there. So the other thing you've got to do, obviously, is get around and look at some of the things. We've got the zoo is obviously fantastic. We actually did the platypus headquarters, rescue
Yes, of
headquarters
course.
opening last week, so that was a pretty exciting day. But the zoo, the Royal Flying Doctor Visitor Experience Centre, the Old Dubbo Jail, Wellington Cave, so there's some fascinating things to see, but all in front of you now, which is very exciting for you. And of course, our new residence night, you'll have to come along to our new
Yes.
residence night.
Don't worry, Muzz has been mentioning that to me.
Oh, good.
But you haven't been to one either, and he's been here for what, I don't know, 17 years now.
I keep telling him if he hasn't been to one, he's still allowed to come to one.
He
but
qualifies still,
he
yes.
said he'd be too embarrassed to go along to one.
It's
So
never
anyway,
too late.
welcome to Dubbo. Great to see you here. Great to see people moving out to our city.
Thank you very much. Now, I have the first question I've got to ask is, I've been listening to some of the news over the last few days. What is going on with toilets? I just keep hearing toilets talked about constantly.
Well, you would think that it's something a bit unusual, wouldn't you? And our council meeting actually had 3 of the agenda items specifically related to toilets.
That's
So
a lot of toilet talk.
there is a lot of toilet talk around, so we'll keep it as high level as we possibly can. But essentially, a few things went through council. One was in relation to Cameron Park toilets, so that's down in Wellington. Some toilets were replaced a few years ago. They were a normal set of toilets where you'd walk in and there's multiple cubicles in there and multiple people could be in there in the common area at the same time with individual cubicles. And a few years ago, the last council replaced those and put some single cubicles. So now you've got one male, one female and a disabled. And of course, that's caused a problem for coaches, for tourists when they come along. Every time they want to go to the toilet, there's a lineup of people going to the toilet. So one of our notices, most that was brought forward last week at council, was to look at some more toilet options in Cameron Park. The disappointing part for Wellington people is that what was there has been replaced with something that's not as good. So you kind of expect things to upgrade, not downgrade. So that was a failing from the last council. So we need to have a look at that. The second thing that was on the agenda was in relation to a toilet policy. Now, I know that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it does, definitely.
We did debate that at length. In the end, councillors decided not to go ahead with a toilet policy. There weren't many other councils across the state, surprisingly enough, that had a toilet policy.
Wow, you
And
surprised me there.
That's right. You think it'd be number one on the agenda, wouldn't you? And it has been talked about recently at State Parliament about councils having a toilet policy. So councillors in the debate said maybe it would be better for the state government to have an overarching toilet policy rather than 128 councils across the state having their own individual.
28 toilet policies across the state. Yeah, that'd be incredible.
So that was talked about and in the end dismissed and said that each toilet block that we build or replace would be a bespoke event anyway. So a toilet policy didn't make a lot of sense. And the third item was in relation to questions about the 3D printed toilet. Now you may have heard about this.
Yeah, it's actually quite remarkable. I was surprised that I hadn't heard about anyone do anything like it before.
Yeah, so it's the first piece of public infrastructure from any level of government across the nation built, and I'm not sure if you've been able to check this one out yet, but it's quite an interesting design, and one of the things that was fascinating about it, it was a spectator sport. When it was being printed, they didn't take long to print it, they set up their gantry, a few days later it's all done. But the lineup of people outside the construction fence just watching this printing going on, it's quite mesmerising just watching layer upon layer upon layer just be built up with this toilet block. So it was quite fascinating. Our objective is to get to the point where We can do some houses. We've got 4 blocks of land for a future land reserved for 3D printed housing. And in fact, I met with someone last week who wants to print 60 3D printed houses in Dubbo because they know there's an affordable housing problem and there's actually just a housing problem in general. We've got lots of people like you, Keegan, who want to be here in Dubbo, but there's not enough housing for them to live in. So that was all on the back of that. We said, well, we need to replace this toilet. It's in our budget to do it. Should we do it as a 3D printed toilet? So we did that as a 3D printed toilet. And one of the questions that came to council last week was in relation to how that specific design was chosen, why it wasn't single cubicles, because it could have been single cubicles. That was just a decision from our staff. And basically it's a multiple cubicle toilet, again, because it's a fairly popular area at Lions Park West. People have barbecues there. It's on part of a running track. So again, toilets, toilets, toilets. So you've come to Dubbo and you've gone, what is the fascination with toilets
here?
here?
I love toilets here, apparently. I mean, let's slightly change it from toilets. I hear there's a lot of news when it comes to renewables in this area going on.
It is. It's exciting. It's more exciting than toilets, believe it or not.
I'm glad it is, yes.
There are 37 renewable projects in our area. So the area that we're in is called the Central West Arana Renewable Energy Zone. So there's lots of renewable projects happening in that area. We don't have any control over that. The state government controls those. They are the consent authority. The planning department, state government planning department will approve these or make any modifications required. Our job really is to catch as much money along the way as we possibly can from all these proponents. And we just put through at our council meeting last week one of those planning agreements, which is quite exciting. It's a large project. It's called the Spices Creek Wind Farm. It hasn't got the go-ahead yet, but part of the discussion going through is the planning agreement. The planning agreement we put together with them is 1.5% of the total construction cost will come back to council for us to use on community projects around Spices Creek. Now, it's a $2 billion project.
That's a lot of money.
That's right, 1.5% of that, $30 million. Now the way that works is you'll take that $30 million rather than a one-off lump sum. It'll be divided by the life of the project, say 30 years, and so it'll be $1 million a year with CPI. So for the next 30 years, that'll be $1 million that council will have to use to actually basically use on things around that Spices Creek area. Now there's a slight technicality there. It's 117 turbines in that particular proposal or project. 106 of those are in our council area. 11 of those are in the Warrumbungle Shire Council area, so we won't get the full $1 million. It'll be pro-rated, some for Warrumbungle, some for ours, but it's still close to $1 million that we'll have once that project starts each year to spend on the community. Now that's just one project. 37 projects, now they're not as big as that, so there's not $37 million.
Well, that'd be a real lot of money.
That'd be very nice, but that's the thing. From our perspective, the job is really to make sure as these projects go through, we've got to negotiate with each individual one, and it's a bit of a frustration that the state or the federal government hasn't got a overarching policy, a bit like the toilet policy. Let's have an overarching policy that says how much they should pay to the local council. But in general, our job is to negotiate with each proponent. And that was a good negotiation. That Squadron Energy, they seem to be very good in terms of the way they approach things from a social licence perspective. So that's pretty exciting. And again, that's one. There's lots more we've got of these coming through.
I mean, when they're taking up local land, I suppose getting a huge amount of money back over 30 years is always a great thing for the local area, especially if it's for a renewable project. Correct,
and think about those landholders, they're getting paid as well, and each individual negotiation is private, but typically the numbers I hear are around about $30,000 to maybe even $35,000 per turbine per year for the landowner. So it's good money for the landowner, and keep in mind that they're still running their farm, they're still grazing their sheep or their cattle on there because they can do that around the turbines. The turbine takes up a small amount of space. They usually get their roads upgraded because the proponent building it needs better roads to bring some of the equipment in. So it's not a bad win for the owner of the land. That owner then still has more money to spend in the local community, plus council gets some money to spend in that local community as well. So it seems like a win-win-win. There are some people without a doubt that aren't the greatest fan of wind turbines, maybe how they look on the environment, and people have some various issues with them. But I think in general, from our perspective, we don't control it. Let's just see if we can get some money out of it, which is what we're trying to do.
So everybody benefits. Well, it's great to see that there's actually large-scale projects happening like that in the local area out here. And I'm sure when you first walked in this morning, you didn't think you'd be talking about toilets for so long. So I appreciate you clarifying that situation.
And if I could pick one thing there, you're obviously a slightly younger generation than myself. I mean, I'm late 20s, so you must be about mid-20s.
Yeah, that sounds about right. You're almost dead on.
So effectively, someone from your generation, and I would say that you're a full generation behind my generation, sees renewable projects as something that's very positive. And I think your generation sees renewables, they see a wind turbine, and they think that's a very positive thing. look at this community, they're making sure they're looking after the planet. So different generations have different views, but certainly I think your generation will see this as a positive.
100%. Thank you very much for coming in, Matt Dickerson. I'll chat to you in probably just a couple of weeks.
Sounds great. Thanks, Keegan.
Thanks, mate.